So we're talking about relationship astrology. The distance to the woman, the principle and the technique. Is there a harmonious masculine-feminine flow, or is there a short circuit? Okay, so it's Sam and I'm making this video to discuss the distance to the woman, which is a concept in Vedic astrology, especially relationship compatibility. This distance to the woman shows a fundamental patterning between masculine and feminine energy and how well energy is transmitted and received in a relationship. And as you see behind me, I have something that says the principle and the technique, which are two different things. And then here it says one part of a comprehensive system. So what I mean by the principle and the technique is this. As with everything in Vedic astrology, or really in any kind of teaching, there is the actual method, like how to actually do it, which I'm going to explain. But then there's also the principle, okay? And of course the method is just what you look for to see the principle, okay? So in this case, the principle is that it's easier in relationship when the energy flows from the man to the woman naturally, okay? And of course, Vedic astrology shows our tendencies. Actually, all of astrology does, but Vedic astrology, of course, is very dialed in with, because it comes from Indian culture. They're not, it's, quite frankly, not as burdened by things like political correctness and a lot of modern ideas that says, well, women can initiate too, right? Well, I don't, it's not like women have to sit back and just be passive and all this. That's not actually what it means. This is kind of sort of mixture of ideas. It very naturally states that, for example, masculine energy is the assertive principle in life. It's not an opinion. It doesn't say that, having said that, that doesn't mean men should always assert, and that when men assert, it's aggressive. So men are supposed to dominate. Again, now we take everything and spin it through some extreme kind of idea. It doesn't mean that. It just means that masculine energy is the assertive quality in life, which is very much personified by Shiva or Vishnu. The masculine principle is the power to actually do something, like the principle itself, that there's energy. And then feminine energy is the energy of receptivity and then creativity as a result. That's why it's called Shakti. So again, you see these things personified in the sun and the moon, right? The sun is the masculine force in life that energizes everything. You don't think that's true? Look up in the sky. What do you think gives energy to everything in life? It's the sun. The food you eat is actually sunlight. The plants take the sunlight and turn it into something that your body can use. Okay, so all of the energy of life comes from the sun, which is the masculine principle, but then the capacity to absorb, reflect, harmonize, feel is the feminine principle, and it's shown by the moon. And again, it's not just an opinion, because the power of the sun was giving power and energy to the earth and everything for billions of years. But it wasn't until the moon moved into the sacred vibration with the sun that life on earth was created. So it's the sun and moon together that create life on earth. The harmony of the masculine and feminine together create life on earth. The power of the sun, the creative principle of the moon. Our entire existence revolves around the balance of these two forces. Okay? So when you look into a relationship, it simply acknowledges that the relationship between a man and a woman works best when the man is naturally in the initiating role. Not like some judgment, you gotta initiate more. No, we're not talking about this because, astrology shows the natural circuits that are running that we can't see. And the natural circuit that runs best when you look in an astrology chart is where the man's moon falls in the most direct line to the woman. So how am I doing this? It's very simple. Like, you can take the moon, you can take the ascendant, you can really take any planets, but relationship astrology has more to do with the moon than anything else, because it's the mind. And the moon is the main thing that we're bonding through in a relationship, because it's our heart, how we feel. And how we feel around another person. The woman wants to feel like the man is there. He's paying attention. His energy gets to her very quick. She comes in the room and he's like, oh, da 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 da. There's a bond. And then she feels, okay, he's there, he's paying attention. That's shown when the shortest distance is from the man to the woman. If this is reversed, for example, and it's woman and man, and the shortest distance is from her to him, then what happens is he's sitting there doing something, she walks in the room, he keeps doing what he's doing, he doesn't look up to say something or pay attention, instead he keeps doing what he's doing, or just kind of goes, huh, and then gets back to it, and then so she starts doing things to say, hey, pay attention to me, so how was your day? So, what's going on? So, blah, blah, blah. And the man is like, doing his thing. He's like, fine, yeah, that's fine. Back to what he's doing. Oh, so that happened. Oh, great. Oh, so this person did that. Oh, okay. So that happened. Oh, great. And he's just like thinking, you know, can't wait for you to be quiet and let me get back to what I'm doing. It's just naturally wired that way. Even if he doesn't mean anything by it, even if he still really loves her and cares about her and all like that, what happens is that the energy gets short-circuited. And frankly, it's kind of like the foundation of most relationship problems. I've been doing relationship astrology readings since 2006, full-time. Not just that, but I've looked at relationships since then. So I think, what, is that 12 years? Easily, this is the simplest and most obvious problem that I see in a relationship. Every time I see it, I describe it, and it's always true. This one is extreme, but it can go all the way over, like if the woman is here and the man is all the way over to like right here, right? If it's 6 and then 8. So here it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 signs to get to the man, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 to get to the woman. The more, you know, the closer it is, if it's backwards like this, where the woman is closer to the man, like if it was here and here, it would be even more extreme. But here is less than here. So you want to look at the distance. And if the woman is totally getting on the man all the time, it feels like she's nagging him. This is why, you know, the big knock to women is, you know, the sort of nagging. Women are going to feel like nags anyway, probably, to most men, to some extent. I don't mean that to sound sexist, but it's just because they, you know, maybe tend to want more attention and more reassurance than men can give anyway. But most of the time, when you have the man getting to the woman quicker, that really calms down a whole lot. And even in the nagging department or the this or the that, it doesn't feel as bad because she can relax a lot more, especially if she's secure in herself. She might not nag him at all. In fact, she might feel like he's kind of getting on her a little too much, but actually women don't mind that as much. In fact, it's reassuring to them to have the man within reason. Again, I'm not saying it's reassuring to have the man like trying to control her or dominate her or anything. It's none of those negative stereotypes. That's not what it means. It just means he's attentive and his attention is always there. Now again, it's just one thing because all of it can go too far. It can be too extreme. There are other ways to compensate for it. But the principle is also what's important, which means you want to look at many different factors that show the masculine and feminine flow and the circuit flowing correctly. Okay? One of the other ways where the circuit often flows in a backward way, like I said, there's the masculine feminine flow, but there's also, as I just said, the sun and the moon are two indicators. They're the sort of overall indicators of masculine and feminine energy. So when you see, for instance, the woman's moon on the man's sun, like the sun is the masculine energy. Let's say the man has, let's say you have this is the woman, and in the man's chart, he has the sun there. That's quite a good bond for the woman because the woman's moon is her heart and the man's sun is his power. So when you have the man's sun on the woman's moon, it naturally feels good because, you know, the man's energy is being reflected back in a way that feels good. And by the way, that's also what happens when this circuit runs well. When it's the man getting to the woman quickly, what happens is that the man's energy gets to her in a way that feels good, and then she receives it in a way that the man likes, and then she reflects back that very easily. And his desire, when it, you know, when the shortest distance is from the man to the woman, he wants to give attention. It's not like he's trying to, you know, kind of push her away and go, okay, yes, you're here, and no, I'm not talking to you as much as you'd like. I get it. When you have when you have the short circuit, this is always going on. When it's not, the man is actually very interested in the woman. He's always like, hey, what are you doing? Hey, what are you doing? Da da da. Women like to receive that. Oh yeah, he's very attentive. He pays attention. Even if it goes a little overboard, at times they don't mind. But when it goes overboard for the man, everybody minds. As soon as the woman starts to go even a little bit, the man knows. Men know what this means. It's like, yes, I get it. I'm not talking to you as much as you like. Yes, I get it. So what are you up to? I'm working. Yes, I realize you want attention, but I just don't want to give it to you. That's what it feels like when it's short-circuited. The same principle, man's sun on woman's moon, the woman's heart can kind of relax because the sun and the moon are pairs. The woman's heart, which is the moon, and the man's sun, which is his power, are joined. When it's backwards, again, woman's sun on man's moon, again, you get into the classic idea of, I feel like I'm his mommy. I feel like he wants a mommy. The mommy, right? These are the two big complaints, right? He wants a mommy, not a partner. Or he doesn't pay attention to me. I come in and I could be invisible. I could be anybody. These are the things, right? They're not, everybody thinks their relationship is so unique. It's always like, oh, what's the, you know, it's so different. Like the only time, you know, it's usually most of our karma, most of these principles are very simple. It's masculine-feminine interaction, right? So the principle is very important, and you look for the principle in a lot of places. One of the ways you also do it just overall is, let's say that just in general, the woman has a chart that has a lot of masculine energy. Let's say it's like, you know, Aries Ascendant with Sun and Venus in Aries, and so, you know, whatever. That's a lot of masculine energy. Doesn't mean she can't be feminine either. She might have the moon in Cancer and other kind of feminine, you know, qualities. I'm sure she will, because it's, you know, nothing is extreme. Everyone is a mixture of both anyway. But let's say in general, her masculine exceeds his. So she's got the Aries, she's got much more masculine energy, and let's say that he's, you know, like, you know, Cancer. You know, Cancer Ascendant, you know, maybe he's, you know, got the Sun in Capricorn, you know, maybe moon in Cancer, or, you know, whatever. Like, he's got a lot more feminine energy. You look at the two charts to see who's generally the more masculine and who's the more feminine. When it's reversed, again, it's like a short circuit. And by the way, you might not be surprised to see that if you get something where, for instance, you have the woman and the shortest distance is from, I keep going back and forth here, the shortest distance is from the woman to the man, you shouldn't be surprised to see that it would probably be a woman who has something like an Aries Ascendant. And the man is more in the feminine role, just through the chart. Of course, this is what winds up happening. When I see women where the woman, you know, where the circuit is backwards, you see it in their natal chart. Because a man who has a lot of masculine nature and a strong masculine, you know, energy and identity anyway, is going to have a very hard time being in this kind of relationship. Because as soon as he starts to feel the woman, you know, asking for more attention than he wants to give, he will get frustrated and stop. Plus, a man who's masculine is going to be approaching a lot, and only women who can receive will wind up being able to join them. So these things are not separate. Okay, so you look for the principle, but then you also have techniques to show the principle, and it's part of a larger comprehensive system. By the way, I also want to make sure that I explain something else that people ask me about, and that is what happens when the moons are in the same sign or opposite signs. What if it's here? Well, this is actually quite good. Opposites do attract. In general, the opposition is an attracting point. Okay, the technique actually in classical Vedic astrology comes down to nakshatras. Okay, and the shortest distance should be based on nakshatras, right? 13 to the woman, 14 to the man. It should be closer of the man to the woman. But again, we use the rashis as well. When you have the opposition, and I generally consider rashis for this, then it holds the relationship together quite well, usually. And again, you don't have to consider which nakshatra. I generally don't so much, even though in classical Kuta astrology, what's called Sri Dirg blemish will be there if the nakshatras, like if this is at the first nakshatra, if this is at the last nakshatra, let's say this one would be in Punarvasu, and this would be like at the first one of Mula, then technically the shortest distance would be from the woman to the man. But because they're in the same rashis, I consider it to be the opposition, and I consider it to be not so bad. So oppositions, it's a strong glue, but it's a difficult one. In Western astrology, they call it open enemies. 7th house is the opposition, right? It's the mirror, it's the opposite point. So if it's one's Gemini, one's Sagittarius, there's a lot of tension there. But often that tension keeps us together, right? That harmonic tension, just like 7th house. But I don't really consider the blemish of Sri Dirg that way. When they're joined, I also don't. I actually tend to think that moons in the same sign are actually quite good because it shows a similar mindset. Overall, again, these are generalities because sometimes too much of that thing can be kind of, stuck or extreme, particularly if it gets in feminine signs or there's too much emotion and whatnot. But as a general principle, I don't mind it so much because it shows a similar understanding of the other person. And with other factors, it's not so bad. In the classic Kuta system, when you get the two moons in the same nakshatra, if they're Rakshasha nakshatras, it's said to be not so bad. But that's for a different reason because the women, Rakshashas, are harder to pair with others. So there's principles within that. But generally, when I see the moons in the same sign or the same rashi, what I know is that they're going to have a similar emotional outlook and style. What that usually means is that they understand each other, but it can also be an extreme. Again, nothing is really that simple. Everything it can be, sort of categorized, but, we usually get into, well, is it good or bad? Is it good or bad? I have this. Is it good or bad? You just want to explain and understand what it is. So again, these are all parts of a larger comprehensive system. This is one small part. It's an important one. And it has to do with this principle of masculine, feminine. And the way I have been doing relationship astrology for more than a decade, I sort of codified it into a system called 3D relationship astrology because there are 3 prongs to doing relationship astrology. First, you need to assess the individual, like I was just saying. The man in the relationship and the woman, if it's, a man and a woman. If it's gay couple, it's the same thing, because there has to be some movement. But let's say that it's a straight couple. The man, just archetypally and stereotypically and following the laws of nature, relationship will work better when the man is in the initiating role. He feels like he's initiating, which means that the woman likes to receive what the man is giving. She reflects it back in a way that feels good to him. Then he keeps giving more, she keeps receiving more, and it's a harmonious flow. It's not that hard to understand. Doesn't mean that the man's dominating her or abusing her or any of this stuff. So you always want to look at the man's masculine nature and his capacity for masculinity and to not get knocked off course and to not be sitting there waiting for the woman to, tell him how to, live his life and all that. This just grinds the gears to a halt. You want to look at the woman's capacity to receive, right? And the tendencies of each individual as a person in a relationship. You analyze the Venus, analyze the 7th house, analyze the 7th house Lord, look in the Navamsha chart, all of that stuff. That's the first prong of the 3D relationship. The second is what's called synastry, which doesn't have anything to do with this. This is actually from the Kuta points, the distance. But the synastry has to do with things like when I was saying the man's sun on the woman's moon. Now you're taking one chart and laying it on top of the other, right? So what if the man's sun is on the woman's moon, but let's say the woman has Saturn here. Okay, so that means that her Saturn is aspecting her moon, aspecting his sun. What does that mean? Let's say that the woman has Saturn here and the man has Rahu here. Well, then they have this Rahu-Saturn conjunction through synastry. That's what it's called. You lay one chart on top of the other and you look and see. Now, you mainly look at the important facts, like let's say the woman has this rising sign, right? And let's say that the man has this rising sign, okay? And let's say that the woman has Venus here and the man has Jupiter here. Well, that's really good, right? Because then the woman's Venus is in his first house. He's going to naturally feel her beauty. His Jupiter is in her first house, so she's going to naturally feel inspired, for example. Well, again, let's say his Rahu is there. Oh boy, all of a sudden, this guy, I don't know what it is, just something weird. I just can't really relax. And let's say, instead of that, let's say he's got Rahu in the first. So now he's got Rahu in the first, her Venus is there. Again, now her Venus is exciting his whole Rahu. Again, all this is a different thing. The synastry shows the buttons that are getting pushed. Very active. And it's different than the kutas. Okay, because once you evaluate the masculine and the feminine nature, then you look at the individual charts and see which planets are on top of the other ones, because those are the buttons getting pushed. It's literally like the active thing that you feel around another person. And you focus on a couple key things. Of course, the ascendant is very important. The moon, obviously very important, because that's how we feel. You want to look at Venus, of course, because that's how we love and what we're attracted to. But you really have to look at all planets. You just look and see what's getting activated. And you want there to be gentle influences. One person's moon, one person's Venus. It's very nice. One person's moon and the other person's ascendant. We naturally trust that person. So see this in your life. Look at your friends. It doesn't have to be lovers. Look at those people that you get along with. Let's say if you're a Virgo ascendant. Notice how people who have a Virgo moon, you just naturally trust them. Why? Because the moon is our heart. And we're kind of very transparent wherever our moon is. We can't really hide it. It's our feelings. So anyone who has their ascendant where your moon is, they're going to just usually naturally sort of trust you. Now, if you're a very untrustworthy person, they'll sense that. They'll feel it. Wherever someone's moon is, the other person can really feel that person's heart, right? So notice what your ascendant is. Let's say your rising sign is Capricorn. Anybody who has the moon in Capricorn, again, you're going to naturally trust them. Let's say someone has the sun in Capricorn, then they're going to naturally kind of invigorate you. You're going to feel this light and that power from them, right? So this is synastry, one chart on top of the other. It shows the buttons getting pushed. Someone has this like Rahu, then naturally we're going to, like if it's Rahu in our first house, there's something about it. Even let's say we have the moon Venus conjunction through synastry, but let's say there's also Rahu in our first. Then even though there's sort of gentleness flowing, something about it just feels unsettling. And of course, wouldn't you know, it's a mixture. We get involved with people with often a lot of synastry. It's very confusing because we're confusing and people's planets hitting our charts in places that push different buttons, right? Because they're activating parts of us that are different. So we wind up having these inner conflicts. Well, I'm really attracted to him, but something feels really weird and I'm not sure I can trust him and blah, blah, blah. A lot of that is shown in synastry. And frankly, a lot of Vedic astrologers, especially when they do classic Vedic astrology and it's all based on synastry, it's all based on nakshatra kutas and all that, they really miss it. Because the nakshatra kutas show something else very specific. And it shows the thing I said, one person's moon to another person's moon. How these divine forces are interacting with each other through the two charts. Not one planet on top of the other one, but this moon to that moon, this sun to that sun, this ascendant to the other ascendant. And you should really evaluate all of the different planets. And they're evaluated around several criteria. Most of them have to do with, I shouldn't say most of them, but some of them have to do with things like Ayurveda, like there's a Nadi Kuta, which has to do with the element. It shows where some things are very much in balance, some things are out of balance. Sometimes you want things to be the same, or at least harmonious. Other times you want things to be different. Like for instance, with the yoni, you want the yonis to be quite similar. Like it's good if you have a tiger to be paired with the other tiger, or another fierce animal, usually. The fierce animals are harder to pair. Lions and tigers are harder to pair than like monkeys and rabbits and things like that, elephants, because they're more gentle animals. But so you want them to be the same, but other things you want to be different. Like with Nadi Kuta, it's based on elements. So there's a windy, a watery, and a fiery. You want them to be different. Because if there's an excess, if they're both watery, then it's too emotional. Doesn't mean water is bad. It just means if you have one that's watery, you want the other one to be fiery or windy to balance it out. Because then when one person gets all emotional, the other person stays rational or inspired. But if they're both fiery, then one person gets a little fired up, and then the other one gets fired up, and you have a sort of immolation. So the kutas judge nakshatras, nakshatra qualities, based on 9 criteria. It's called Ashtakuta, 8 kutas. And then there are other conditioning factors like Shri Dirgha is 1. That's not a point-giving kuta, it's a conditioning factor. And then you have Veda, which is just an innate relationship between 2 nakshatras. And then you have Raju, which is rope, where you also want Raju to be different. It's based on body parts. So this is the 3D relationship approach. Each criteria is different. First you have to assess the person, then you assess the synastry and the buttons getting pushed, and then you assess the sort of cosmic interactions between the different planets. And that gives a real comprehensive overview, and they're all different things. One of the problems is you see astrologers who haven't worked through things and they don't understand how they're different. It brings up, well, what happens when synastry shows this, but kutas show that? Or the birth chart shows that, but this shows that. That doesn't happen when you know what you're looking at. Everything's not the same. Synastry is, you're not evaluating the same thing when you're looking at synastry as when you're looking at the kutas, as when you're looking at the individual chart. And in fact, you should be able to see how all of it works. And so I've taught several courses on this. I taught a really powerful course several years ago where absolute beginners learned how to do it by the end of the class in 2 days, 6 hours a day. People who were absolute beginners were already doing it, because it's not that complicated if you see it laid out for you. If you get the principles straight, this masculine, feminine stuff straight. Of course, all of this is based on, once you understand the principle of masculine, feminine, then you see it everywhere. Masculine sign, masculine sign, feminine sign, right? Sun is a masculine planet. The moon is feminine planet. Mars is masculine. Venus is feminine. Jupiter is masculine. And then Mercury and Saturn are neutral. And then the lunar nodes just exaggerate things, right? So you see masculine and feminine everywhere. You see elements everywhere. You just learn how to use them in the right context. And so that's what the courses are about. And some of the most popular courses that I've ever done, the relationship astrology courses. So this is an overview because people have questions about this sort of synastry and this masculine feminine thing, and they always like, are there exceptions, or what about this? So again, opposites I don't consider it to be that bad. And when planets are joined, when the moons are joined or other planets are joined, it also shows a commonality of that thing, but it could also be in excess. And again, when they're opposite, there's a lot of glue, but there's also a lot of pulling and opposition. The best, interactions are often this 3-11 with the man here, woman here. Also 4, anything, the 5-9, anything where the man is getting to the woman first. This one is always quite good because it's, the same gender. Like this would be a masculine sign Gemini, and this would be a masculine sign Leo. And the short distance of the man or the woman, Gemini Leo is a great interaction, or Leo Libra. Libra, Sagittarius, or, you know, Cancer, Virgo, Virgo, Scorpio. Very good. So I hope this was interesting and helpful. I tried to cover a lot, but now we're getting close to half an hour once I start going. So again, you want to understand, though, as with everything that you study, astrologically, there's the principle itself, which is most important. And the principles we covered here were masculine and feminine flow. This is a universal principle. And then, you know, the other principle that we covered is the 3D relationship approach. You need to assess each individual first. This is why every person, their relationships all have the same sort of quality. They all have you in common, right? It's not just one day I'll find a relationship where all of my problems won't come out. Good luck. It ain't going to happen. It's just, you know, because you're the common denominator. So first you evaluate based on the individual. Then you see why each one is a little different based on the synastry, which buttons are getting pushed in which interaction. And of course, the more harmonious relationships are the ones that don't push the negative buttons. So this is what we look at to see what's the tendency and the natural kind of emotional hardwiring with you and another person. And then the Kuta points are the deeper spiritual relationships that are connected to the nakshatras and a deeper soul connection. So that's the principle, and then we talked about the techniques. This is the technique. Shri Dirga, distance to the woman. You know, laying one chart on top of the other to see this over that. That's the technique of synastry, but again, it's based on the principle of which buttons are getting pushed and which are getting activated. And again, it's part of a comprehensive system. You know, these techniques and principles are, when seen in context, really show a comprehensive way to understand your relationships. And it's really not even that hard. So if you're seeing this video and I'm selling the course on the relationship astrology, go ahead and get it. You'll certainly like it. It'll teach you a lot about yourself and your relationships, and even how to do relationship astrology readings and whatnot if you ever wanted to do that.